Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Green Room. It may only be September, but that Christmas music has welcomed you all to our brunch time chat of all things theater. And as Mame Dennis famously said, we need it now. Christmas, that is. I have a thrilling panel with me today, three ladies. We have an all-female panel this afternoon. I'm very excited about this. And they are three extremely versatile and prolific theater professionals. And the first one I'd like to bring on is one of the voices you heard in that number, one of the opening numbers from How the Grinch Stole Christmas. She was one of those singers in that robust, lusty ensemble. And she alone on this panel can probably answer the question, what the heck does fa hu dores mean? Please welcome Amy Griffin.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for
Hello. my favorite Who has appeared.
thank you.
And I want to ask you that because I've never known what fa hu dores means. What does it mean?
Well, it's not explicitly said what it means, but it is a words of celebration.
Well, thank you. Then it's perfectly appropriate for the middle of September, and
in the Who culture, it's traditional holiday celebration.
Okay, well, let me bring on the next guest, and this lady is a songwriter, an actress, a singer, and an activist, and I'm very pleased to include her as a friend. Please welcome Anita Hollander.
Hi. Oh, hello.
Hi, Anita. I think once we get all four of you, we'll be able to see you a little bit clearer. Okay, in that case, let's bring on my third guest. She is also a writer and an actress and a singer and a longtime friend. Please welcome Joanne Lessner.
Hi.
Hello.
Did you know, by the way, that my husband conducts The Grinch? Do you know that?
Now, see, now there's another degree of separation. You guys, I know you guys know each other, and I've been told that I'm not going to get a word in edgewise, so I'm going to try to get them in as early as possible. We usually start the show with a little round robin that I've been calling 6 degrees of David Edwards, but I think it's really 1 degree of David Edwards. And I'd like you to refresh my memory of your memory of how we know each other. So why don't we start with Amy?
Hi, well, the 6 degrees, it's 2 degrees, I guess, for us, because David and I have worked together both as director and actor. He directed me in fabulous production of The Producers, which is, I'm pretty sure, how we met.
I think so. That would have been my guess, yeah.
Yeah, and David had done the show on tour, yes, and had a big history with The Producers, and he directed production at Westchester Broadway, and I played Hold Me, Touch Me, which was such a joy. And then more recently, we acted together in The Learned Ladies, and we both got to chew the scenery in ginormous, fabulous ways.
In verse, yes. Yes. You're absolutely right. Those are my recollections, and we see each other quite often. As I recall, too, you left that production of the Producers to go back to Whoville.
I did. That's actually the only, if I'm remembering correctly, that's the only time I've ever had to leave a show early. So I do remember that very clearly.
Well, you get 10 demerits today, but that's all.
I know. It was only 2 weeks, though. Only 2 weeks only.
And Joanne, I think we've known each other a really long time.
Yeah.
What is your memory of our meeting?
You seem vaguely familiar. I can't recall. I'm pretty sure Company was first.
Yes.
I think Company was first. And then remind me what you did in That's Life. Were you my counterpart? Were you the male standby? That's what I thought. I couldn't remember. I had these visions of you, of doing the show with you, but then I kept seeing these 3 other guys, but then the penny dropped and I figured that out.
Yes. Well, it's been a little while ago. For those of you who may not be knowing what the heck we're talking about. It was a show that ran off Broadway for well over a year in 2 different venues called That's Life, which was a celebration of contemporary Jewish life.
It was a Jewsical.
Yes, a Jewsical. I'm glad you said it. I you know, as one of the Gentiles that was traveling incognito, I had to. I will tell you one story about that too. There was a. Do you remember that there was a beautiful ballad where the character that I played, because I was the standby, but then I took over and did it all over the country. I sang a song about teaching my little boy to speak Yiddish. And it was a lovely ballad, and I worked very hard at trying to pronounce everything correctly and be very convincing. And one day we had a matinee over at Theater East with a bunch of theater party ladies, and at a very tender, quiet moment in the song, I took a breath and I heard this voice saying, "He's not Jewish."
No.
Oh no, it's like your worst.
I tried to compose myself and continue. And as I hit the next phrase, I heard her say again, "He's gorgeous, but he's not Jewish." And so I felt a great deal of imposter syndrome, but it's been a funny anecdote that I've.
That's amazing.
But we didn't do anything else together, right? Sometimes I feel like I don't think so, because sometimes I feel at this point in my life, like Guy Pearce in Memento, that I keep getting dropped into my life with no recollection of anything that happened before.
It's all right. It with being over 29. So as I think we all are, I'm not sure. I just passed that, but. So Anita, what is your memory of our first encounter, as it were?
Well, it was 2013, I believe.
She has a year for it. Oh my God.
I believe so. I mean, while you've all been talking, my little inner computer's been flipping through its Rolodex, and you directed a beautiful, beautiful production of Showboat. And nobody ever does Showboat in 10 weeks stock, 10 days stock, excuse me. With about 10 days of rehearsal, we put on this glorious Showboat with Andy Einhorn musical directing, and it was really pretty glorious. And that was us.
And I have to say that it was sort of a ridiculous thing to assume that we could accomplish with that cast and everything. And it was at the end of a season, and we had no budget. I tried to incorporate that into the set design, but we got away with something. I think I was proud of it, with moments, certainly with your performance, Anita. But it was difficult. In fact, when the apprentices at the theater did a little send-up of the show late in the season, they called it No Boat, because it did not happen.
They did. That is very
yeah.
But that was quite a season, because we did Cats 2 shows earlier.
Was it the same season that you did Cats there?
Yes.
Wow.
Sorry. Wait. It wasn't.
You need a tattoo. You need a tattoo.
It was 2004. I'm sorry. I'm totally, because 2013 was the second time I did Cats, but 2004, the first time I played Grisabella as a 3-legged cat, because I'm for those who don't know, I have 1 leg. I'm an amputee, and so instead of wearing the artificial leg, which I did for Parthy in Showboat, it was decided that Grisabella is a perfect role to play on 1 leg. And it turned out to be that it was an exquisite summer. And I'm sorry I got the year wrong. My Rolodex is off.
That's all right. You know, I was going to bring up that performance because it was at Surflight Theater. And incidentally, Steve is going to be on the show next week.
Oh,
so, and people talk about that very gutsy and in a way controversial decision that you made to do what you did with Grisabella, and it really the hairs on the back of my neck went up when I heard that you had done that. It was very bold, and from what I regret I didn't see it, but everybody that did said it was tremendously moving and the right choice. And talk about being the right talent at the right time for the right role. That was it. And you were also terrific in playing Parthy. And as I recall, you used your leg and you danced. And I said, you don't have to do this. You did it anyway. And this is someone who we know from your work with. You are the national chair of the committee in SAG-AFTRA for performers with disabilities. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Which is what I was referring to when I talk about your activism. And we will talk a little bit more about what you have done artistically with that very soon. But you also are a member of a theater company, Theater Breaking Barriers, correct?
Theater Breaking Through Barriers, TBT.
Yeah.
Yeah. An off-Broadway company.
And so this is in the forefront of your work as an activist as well as an artist, and that I'm amazed that you went right there for it and told us, it's you're a crusader, and I really admire that. I have to tell you, I saw a production that you directed at Surflight. I saw your Oklahoma.
Oh.
You did a lovely job with that as well.
I was very proud of that one. Yeah. I love doing that.
Well, and Amy, now we did work together as director and performer, but you are also a director.
I am, yeah, we have that in common, David.
Yes, in fact, I think I auditioned for a production that you were doing of 39 Steps,
yes.
Correct? That I have done twice.
Yeah.
I believe you went with a female for the role that I was.
David was wonderful, viewing audience.
Well, I have to say that you made a bold choice and a smart one, especially, with that show. There's absolutely no reason that one of the clowns can't be a female. And
having two female clowns, which I don't know had been done. It may have. I certainly haven't done any exhaustive search. But as far as we knew, I don't think there had been a production to use two female clowns. And we did audition both very, very talented men and talented women. And we ended up saying, you know what? That was how the combo kind of worked best. And it was really fun to see because as a diehard clown myself, in many ways, it was just, the show certainly has almost like a music hall tradition of being done with two men and men doing drag, which is delightful. And, but we got a real charge out of doing something different with it. And the two women were phenomenal.
Right.
But yeah, we have both, I think, we have performed together. We have worked as director and actor together, and hopefully we'll work in the reverse, where I'll be the director and you'll be the actor.
I'm looking forward to the day.
I
always say when I started directing has made me a better actor and vice versa. And
I feel like such a slacker. I'm the only one here who doesn't direct.
Well,
I'll show myself out, shall I?
Well, because you do things that we don't do.
I don't write music.
I don't write music either. That's Josh's job.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, Joanne has had several shows produced, one rather recently called Einstein's Dreams off-Broadway, that she is the book writer and lyricist, and she somehow knows the composer. Is he in the other room right now?
He is in the other room, and fun fact, on October 7th, we will have been married for 30 years.
Oh, that's so nice.
Which is amazing because I'm 29. So, the math totally works out, right?
I think there are laws against that sort of thing.
Before you were even conceived.
Right. I was an infant bride.
Okay.
But yeah, we have, as I like to say, we've created 6 musicals and 2 children.
Wow. Well, and that's the other thing. I mean, I hate to say this because we don't italicize it when we talk to men. but I wanted to let our audience know that all three of you are moms as well, that you juggle careers and you juggle multiple careers and being moms too, raising kids. And Anita, your daughter has taken on has been passed the baton. She performs, correct?
She does perform, and she's done a lot of work, but she started acting when she was 5 weeks old on All My Children. So like that was old news by the time she went to college and decided that her passion is education. And this, in the last week, she just started teaching second grade in Cambridge, Massachusetts during a pandemic, at the worst possible time.
Oh my God.
She got married during the pandemic in our living room right here. And she had this gorgeous wedding planned up in Nahant in off of Boston, near Boston, on the ocean. It got canceled. She did it in the living room. They moved to Boston. Her husband works at Harvard and she's a teacher in Cambridge. And so she had to face a new city, a new job, and second grade for the first time. She's taught kindergarten, she's taught preschool. So she graduated, and all during this pandemic. So there's blended teaching, online, in person, masks. It's been a stressful time, but I'm so proud of her. She uses all of her talents, her performing talents, her beautiful clarion voice and everything. She uses it all in her teaching, and she's a wonderful, wonderful teacher. And we just did but by the way, Happy New Year, Joanne. Shana Tova.
Thank you.
Just yesterday, my children's choir, which is another job I have, down at the Village Temple, did a family service. And my daughter, who had been in the choir since she had been tiny, and now that she's 31, she's not, but to help us out, she added her voice to it. And there's this beautiful, well-produced, well-edited thing. A few of the songs I wrote, but a lot of them are traditional Jewish songs for the New Year. And I don't know, it was great to have my daughter right there in her little window, because I haven't seen her since she moved up to New England. And that's the story on her. She's just multi-talented and beautiful, and a great teacher who probably will someday just run the education system, because he's a great idea.
Somebody,
That's right, Amy. We really do need someone to run the thing.
I can't believe she's 30 years old. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
In my mind, I still see her. We used to drive back and forth to New York after days off from Surflight, and I still think of her as a child. But yeah, and it's I don't get it, because we've not aged a day. And
I know.
all right. Well, I mean, the times we're living in are enough to stress everybody out, and I think the young people are really putting their best foot forward. We know from what we've had to give up more than I think the kids. I have 3 nephews and a niece, and the 2 older ones are going through their first college experience, and so much has been taken away by this. But they're resilient, and we are leading by example too. We've been through a few things in our lives, I think, and so we'll get through this one. And I always like to keep the discussion positive here, and So Joanne, let's talk a little bit more about Einstein's Dreams. You have, this is not the first show of yours that was given a cast album. Is that true?
Correct. We wrote a show called
one at the York a few years back.
Yeah, my daughter's name is Phoebe, and our first show from Oz Last Tango was an entire Phoebe ago. And she's 19, so again, amazing. Yeah. I was an infant mother. So yeah, From Oz Last Tango was done at the York Theater in 2000, and that is a cast recording on what's the name of the label? It's Bruce Yucca Original Cast Recordings. I can't remember. And so that was about a famous mathematician, and a famous math theorem. It involved singing and dancing dead mathematicians who inhabit the aftermath. So keeping in this vein of we like to sort of find the excitement and the electricity and the human side of intellectual curiosity. So Einstein's Dreams is actually based on a best-selling book by Alan Lightman, and it was produced by the Prospect Theater Company last fall of 2019. Kara Reichel directed it and did a spectacular job. It starred Zal Owen as Albert Einstein and Alexander Silber as the muse who guides him on through his dreams to a discovery, what turns out to be his discovery of his theory of special relativity. And the book itself, a friend of mine actually suggested adapting it as a musical, and I read it and I said, well, this is a beautiful book, but it has no plot and no characters, so no. And then many years later, we were approached again with a commission, and I thought, oh, you're gonna pay me to adapt it? I will find a plot. I will make up characters, and I did. And it was produced last fall, and the original cast recording just came out on Broadway Records just last week, and we were nominated for 4 Drama Desk Awards, which is amazing. Thank you. It was really, really exciting.
Well, I was listening to the score yesterday on the recording, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And,
thank you.
And I do believe that some of the most exciting musicals come from ideas that are certainly less than conventional. And why put it on the stage if you don't have a completely different take on the original material? If it were just a dry musicalization of a book, then
and you can't, because the beautiful thing, Alan's book I highly recommend it. It's beautiful, and the thing that's incredible about it is it has this massive following of all different kinds of people. People are just drawn to this book basically because it's about time, and it's about our personal relationships with time. So in the book is a series of dreams, and in each dream, Einstein is dreaming that time works in a different way. So in one dream, time goes backwards. In one dream, time stops, and a mother can be frozen in time, holding her child and keeping her child, a child forever. Is that really a good idea? Well, no, that's something that we explore in one of the songs in the show. In one dream, time at every decision point splits into 3 potential futures that all play out simultaneously. The beautiful thing about that is if you're doing a play and you can't have 3 people talking at the same time, but of course in music, it becomes this contrapuntal sextet. So basically, it's intellectual in the sense that Einstein was an intellectual, but why it's so compelling is we all at times feel like we're trapped in the past, feel like all we want to do is vault into the future. And we capture the different dreams in the musical. And at the end of the day, time is relative. So it's all of these things. And it really, I couldn't have been happier with the production. It was really the production of my dreams in terms of visually, and the cast was fantastic. And so I hope you'll all give the recording a listen.
Well, I hope it gets done elsewhere. We're getting a little. Yeah. Well,
I would be honored.
Well, having the 3 of you on today seemed something that was just so timely. 3 intelligent, versatile movers and shakers in the business. You're an inspiration. And before we go any further, I would be remiss if I didn't take Joanne's advice and ask Amy a story about an audition with the 2 of you. I should say that we've been talking everything about Joanne's writing, but not quite, just peripherally. We mentioned Company and That's Life that we performed together, but you are an actress and a singer as well. So tell us this story, Amy, before we go any further.
Oh, Lord. Well, this is so funny. Talk about and now for something completely different after we've just been talking about Einstein's theories. Here I must interject. I saw Einstein's Dreams off-Broadway, and I just want to tell everybody it was as gorgeous to watch as it is to listen to. Everyone should definitely buy the recording and just let the music pour over you. It's so gorgeous, and the production was equally so. And now, on a frivolous note, I think I put this on Facebook. I did. I put it on Facebook, and this is how Joanne and her wonderful husband, who is a friend of mine as well, Josh, I think heard about it. I love to put funny audition stories on Facebook because they're so universal. And I was auditioning for a production of One Man, Two Governors, and I was auditioning for the part that's kind of a sex pot. And I was outside the audition, sitting on a bench waiting to go in, and I'm shamelessly adjusting my cleavage because the character is all about the boobs, and it's the 60s, and I'm hoisting up my breasts and my cleavage. And this woman sitting next to me, a fellow auditioner, says, "Oh my goodness, I love your boobs. You have the best boobs." And I thought, well, that's weird, but I mean, flattering. So I said, thanks so much. It's a push-up bra from Victoria's Secret. It sure does the trick, because I'm auditioning for this character who's, using her cleavage to get what she wants in the scene. And the woman goes white, and she says, "Your boots." I said, "I love your boots." On my feet, my high-heeled, sassy, sexy boots. And I fall out laughing, like I'm laughing uncontrollably on this, just doubled over on the bench laughing, like leaning over. And she's super uncomfortable, doesn't laugh at all. She just like looks down, very uncomfortable. And I'm beside myself with laughter, and they come up and they say, "Okay, Amy, you'll be next. Come on in." And Joanne, I'm going to turn the story over to you now for what the hell
the connection here. So I actually also write a detective series. I have four books out featuring an aspiring actress named Isabel Spice, and she goes. It's called the first book is called The Temporary Detective. So basically, she goes from temp job to temp job, and there's a dead body at every temp job, and she of course solves the mystery. But at the same time, I'm tracking her breaking into show business, because it seemed to me that nobody's ever really told like what it's like. You all know, getting up at 6 a.m. and waiting outside in front of the Equity Building and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so part of the, because the backstory, part of it is that she's always going to auditions. So I'm always looking for humiliating audition stories. I have a few of my own. So Amy's, I was like, it's like, are you? Can I borrow that? Can I use that? And it actually does appear in book 3. And I very, very proudly gave Amy special thanks for the best audition story ever.
I don't think I even have the grace to be humiliated. I just think it was the funniest thing in the world.
My favorite part of it is the idea of you getting called in immediately afterwards. Because I would have been like peeing, crying, like a hot mess.
So the big question is, did you do well in the room?
I did, but I didn't get the part. Neither my boobs nor my boots nor I were cast in this production. Although I do know the person who got it, and she was great.
So. As long as it wasn't the other woman.
I know, no, it wasn't her. I ended up doing a show, a collection of A Christmas Carol, with the woman who's coincidentally was also named Amy, who's a wonderful actress, and she said, "Oh, I booked that," because I told the story in the dress room. So it's a small world of theater story, but no.
There's only 10 people in theater, and we just keep changing costumes.
Exactly.
This is our 10th show, and this is the second anecdote that we've had revolving around
around my boobs
and a push-up bra. And I won't tell you who the other person was, but I will tell you it wasn't me.
Oh, really?
And
I'm not interested.
All right.
Several times, it could very well have been, but it was not. But I'm very glad you shared that. I've been waiting all week, Joanne. You have to ask Amy the story of.
I hope it lives up to the hype.
Well, the audience will let us know, but.
Well, it was definitely one of those you can't make this up stories.
Right. Classic.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Joanne, in your writing, have you? Your writing is not just relegated to musicals. Obviously, you have novels, a whole series of novels, as you've explained. What came first, the chicken or the egg? What did you? Was that a sideline, or was that always a passion? Or because I knew you first as a performer.
Yeah, actually, I have to say the writing, the novel sort of came first, although nothing happened with that until well after we'd written some musicals. Um, I actually, I wrote my first novel in high school back in the days. I'm dating myself now, where we didn't have computers and I had to type a term paper. My dad brought an electric typewriter home from his office so I could type my term paper. I had so much fun typing that when I finished the term paper, I just kept going and I just, wrote this. It's like lost in my parents' house somewhere. I'm sure it's awful. I believe it was about somebody who kidnaps a concert pianist and they fall in love. It was ridiculous. And it was called Things Like That Don't Happen in Real Life. Okay. So fast forward to I graduate from college. I go to New England Conservatory because I want to be an opera singer. P.S. didn't happen. And because I was doing so much music, I sort of needed to do something verbal, something just something verbal. So I actually wrote a mystery novel, and tried to get that published. Didn't happen. And then I sort of left that aside, and Josh and I started writing musicals together. And after For Ma's Last Tango, we were trying to come up with another idea for a musical. And he said, have you heard this story about a waiter who dropped a 250-year-old bottle of wine,
Oh my God.
and everybody in the restaurant threw themselves to the floor and started licking the wine up off the carpet? And I said, no, but that's hilarious because who does that? So I attempted to turn that into a musical, and nothing was happening. One night I'm lying in bed thinking, I've got to write something. And all of a sudden it was like a V8 moment. I went, oh my God, the bottle thing. It's not a musical, it's a novel. And I got out of bed at 1:30 in the morning and I wrote the opening scene of my first published novel, Pandora's Bottle, which takes place at an auction where a financier buys a 250-year-old bottle of wine once owned by Thomas Jefferson, pays $500,000 for it. And it's not a spoiler to say the bottle breaks. And basically what the book is really about is how that incident affects him and the girl he's trying to impress, and the waiter, whom I very thoughtlessly named Trip. Actually, it was pretty thoughtful. And the woman who owns the restaurant, who is trying to turn the whole thing into a publicity event. So I turned it into a book. So the two things are really very interconnected, actually.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
I'm amazed because it's like being inside of a pinball machine where the ideas come from and then they converge, and you just let the creativity blossom forth and go wherever it goes, and that's
ideas sort of, as they evolve, the form becomes more obvious. People singing about wine wasn't the same as being inside this guy's head and his obsession with these famous Thomas Jefferson bottles. By the way, it was based on a true story. It happened in 1989 at the Four Seasons restaurant, and at a wine tasting event.
Wow.
By the way, I had to learn a lot about wine. I liked it, but I knew nothing about it. So I like to say, if it's under $20 or over $500,000, I'm your gal. Anything in between, I know nothing.
Well, that's very practical.
Yes.
And along those lines of practicality, Anita, you have a one-woman show that you wrote for yourself with, and it's been done in several venues and rather, I dare say, successfully. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I actually have two solo musicals, but
Two.
the one that you're talking about, Still Standing, which has been around for about 27 years, and I've done it all over the world, and I've done it all over the country. It's about to be published. It's coming out October 17th. So this is my first, I think, this is Still Standing in a book. It's not, it's a musical, but it's the words that the script is being published in an anthology of plays by artists with disabilities, particularly ones who write their own material and perform it. And it's about busting open myths and changing people's understanding of what it is, and still standing. I just did in South Korea last December. I mean, think about that. I was in South Korea last December, and then I flew home, which it was a great experience. And I flew home next to a very sick woman. And in January, I got sick with something, but didn't know what it was.
Oh, wow.
And then I got over it. And then about a month later,
Wow.
sick on the plane, all that stuff. And still, it's no antibody test shows that I had it, but hey. But the show itself was very well received by the Koreans. I've done parts of it in Russia and in Japan, and I was supposed to be doing it in London, September 5th. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's my new show. I'm sorry. A year ago, I premiered my new musical called Spectacular Falls, which is about the many ways we use the word fall. You know, it's a season, but it's also rise and fall, and falling through the cracks, and falling in love, and all the different aspects of it, and ultimately how we all fall, but we get back up again, basically. And it contains it's a lot of fun. The show is an enormous amount of fun to perform, and that would have happened this month, and I would have been doing it in San Francisco this summer, but all of those things will be rescheduled next year. And I will be doing it. But I've got both the CDs are out of Still Standing and out of Spectacular Falls. But the most exciting thing is to know that it'll be published finally after all these years. But
Congratulations.
Still starts my journey. It's a musical survival guide for life's catastrophes, and it's 16 songs, each of which is a tool for survival, represents a tool for survival. And it was inspired. It took 16 years to write because I was writing as I was going through my own survival experiences myself. But in the end, I didn't know it was a musical until a genius composer, lyricist friend of mine, Michael Devin, he won the Richard Rogers Award for Sheila Levine is Dead and Living in New York. And then he was diagnosed with AIDS. And he said to me, how did you get from there to here? How did you get from where you were? In other words, having cancer and losing a leg and blah, 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 to where I was then, in the present. And he said, just give me a list. I'll do everything on the list and I'll survive. And I tried very hard, but I felt that I was not living up to my helping him. And he died in 1991. And that was when I realized I had to put this show out there for people, to give them some tools for survival. And the tools are like imagination, a sense of humor, children, chutzpah, perspective. There's all these, and each song represents one of those things while also telling my story as I went through it. And I'm very pleased that the world will be able to have it.
That is so wonderful, Anita. It's so great to hear. And you know, I mean, this almost seems, in terms of the story that you've just told, this almost seems tangential and small by comparison. But what you did as an artist was create your own work too, and that's so amazing.
That's so important, and that's what I tell everybody. It's like, if you're in a situation where I haven't had work in this many months, or I can't get an audition, and I tell people, well, I needed to get work, and I needed to make my own work because in the 80s, having one leg, moving to New York, you could be the best person. I was down to in the last several years, I've been down to the last 2 people for roles on Broadway, and that very last step of the way couldn't get past that. And that's when you say, well, then I have to show people what I do. Because if they're saying there's no role for me, and I've got a resume full of roles, but if somebody is saying there's just not a role for you, you have to show them what
Yeah.
there is. And also it keeps you working at your craft. It keeps you, and not everybody writes music, and not everybody writes plays, and not everybody, and I don't blame them, but so you work with somebody and do it with them. I just happened to be lucky to be able to use everything I could do and put it all into work. And it has, and I get bookings all over the world. And this was just me doing my thing.
And right now, as we're seeing, as little theaters, because I was saying last week that when this whole thing happened with the pandemic and everything shut down, we thought, oh, well, this will be a few weeks, a few months. And then that hopefulness turned to kind of the depths of despair and seeing no end in sight. And but now I feel like theater artists, especially because we have to have that connection, are realizing no, there must be a way to move forward. And what has been happening, I think it's no one is more surprised than me that little theaters are actually doing one-person shows with social distancing and selling. So if you have a one-person show, you might be on the top of the list to get hired by some of these theaters. And and there are things being done virtually. One of my dear friends, Jonathan Hadley, was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and during the show, he said, "Oh, I just got a call back for a virtual project," and as very desperately, in my own sense of need and worry about keeping my health insurance and everything else, I said, "Do they need an understudy?" Because I have been his understudy before, and I'm very pleased to say that this week, out of the blue, I got a call offering me a 3-week equity job virtually to do a play that I would very much like to do. Now, I'm not going in person, and this is basically a reading, but it's actually a real contract, and with benefits and everything. So to give you all hope, keep doing those virtual auditions, and who knows what may happen. And because we have to find a way to forge forward. Playhouse, and not a Playhouse on the Bar, Music Theater of Connecticut is doing 2 back-to-back one-person plays right now with 25% capacity, which I don't know how that works, because their theater is about as big as the head of a pin to begin with. So I don't know why. But they're also selling tickets online, and I commend them for doing this. So we should talk about places that you need to get the word out and get your show done, because 2 shows now.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Amy.
I was going to say, I just watched the live stream of Musical Theater of Connecticut's production of Fully Committed. I have worked there, and it's a wonderful place to work. And I did Fun Home there, which was a total joy. And Matt Densky is playing the lead, the only role, the lead, obviously, because it's a one-person show of Fully Committed, and it was fabulous. And I had never watched anything on live stream, and it was great. But they did have live audience there. It was small, mighty. 25% of that crowd is like 25 people or something. But I did get to hear actual laughter, which was great. So.
Wonderful. Well, it's great to hear, because Kevin Connors, I've been talking to him about coming on to the show too, and he said, I can't, it's Tech Week. So I normally I would have taken that as I'm disappointed, but I'm very happy for him and the theater that it's Tech Week, and it'll soon be Tech Week again. So, it's very exciting. I know that, talking about Einstein, I have to tell you, I was cast in a play where I was going to play Einstein at this very moment.
Wow.
And they've postponed it. So hopefully when they come back, I'll be playing Einstein. Not in your beautiful musical, but I think I'm a little... I can't. I look at it and I see. I don't see Einstein here, but but I'm very
Well,
glad.
it would be another foray into playing a Jew, David. You
Well,
can draw on all of that experience from That's Life.
I see.
Bring it into the
I
21st
couldn't fool that one woman, but
Hopefully she won't come to see the Einstein play and
well,
calling you out.
we do get typed in a way. I mean, obviously, Anita, you have forged your own way, but you've played a lot of things against type too. I mean, or without regard for your disability, and that's not only your talent, but also that theaters are places like the Goodman. Didn't you do a Shaw there, or
no,
what?
it's the Matchmaker up in Chicago in 2016, where they had me play 3 roles, all very different ages and very different styles. So I was a 20-year-old, I was a 50-year-old, and an 80-year-old, all in the same show, and it was fun because. For one, I wore my leg, and for another one, I was as the old woman. They put me in a wheelchair, and then I rolled, and then I had my leg, and I was rolling the wheelchair across the stage. I was the cook in the 3rd act. I was the pianist at the Harmonia Gardens, and I had a blast, and especially because this director specifically wanted to show people this. It was a very diverse cast anyway. But it was such an incredible thing to take a Thornton Wilder play and have people of different nationalities, colors, types, transgender person. I mean, there were so many different types, and it was a gorgeous production. But I got to play 3 different characters, and it was wonderful. And this summer, I was supposed to be doing Fraulein Schneider in Cabaret, and that would have been my 2nd time doing that role, and I adore that role. But I've done Meg in Damn Yankees. Her name is Meg, right? And the wife. Anyway, but so many different types of role, and a tap dancing nun in Nonsense, and I go against type. Just the point is to show the people that I can do anything that there are certain things I would not go for, but it's also interesting what you can do when you use your creativity. And I tend to think that my disability enhances roles, enriches it, and makes it more interesting. Like in The Sisters Rosenzweig, Gorgeous, the character of Gorgeous is hilarious and everything. And there's one scene where she's on the couch with her sisters and they're laughing. Then she goes off stage, and in about 1 minute, about 60 seconds, she comes on in the next scene in her running clothes, having just come back from a jog. Well, I have a high heel leg, and I have a flat, and I have a tennis shoe leg, like a Reebok leg. So I go running off the stage, change legs, and come back on in my running outfit.
Yeah.
I mean, these things you wouldn't think about in that show. It has nothing to do with anything, but I find that you can actually enhance and improve on a role and do really exciting things. Not to mention dancing on one leg. It's Grisabella, which to me was amazing because the audience felt it resonated in themselves about their own sense of loss. And Grisabella is nothing if not someone who has lost something. And in my interpretation, she's fine with herself, but nobody else is. Mm-hmm. Everyone around her is not okay with that. And they're scared of her, and they shun her. And I was able to sit with the cast and say, this is me walking down the street every day. I go on one leg in crutches. I'm one of the sights of New York City. I walk down the street that way. And everybody's responses to me are all very interesting and different. And I could bring that to that role and for me make it more interesting than what I had previously thought of the show. And when she sings, "If you touch me, you'll understand what happiness is," that's my feeling is who I am, is that I'm okay with this. It's you guys who are just not okay, but you can be okay. Everybody's lost something. And it always worked. The audience was always like, it made me think about something, and it resonated in them, this feeling of loss. And that I was standing on one leg dancing and doing all this stuff. It was just, just part of all.
Well, to me, that is not only an inspiration on your artistic journey, but a reminder to us all that great art and a new way of thinking about a classic or can be found anywhere. It doesn't have to be on Broadway or at Lincoln Center. It can be anywhere. I worked with a director many times who when we were creating a show together, he said, well, you know, we're in Allentown, but if not Allentown, where? And I always say that to my cast when I'm directing. I said, we can create art anywhere.
Yeah.
And
the interesting thing about that is I've done still standing at the Kennedy Center, but I've also done it in a hospital PT ward in the gym where everybody works out. I can do that show anywhere. I've done it at a prison, a girls' prison, and I've with my daughter who came along and sang with me. And I've done it in hospitals. I've done it to train doctors, and then I've done it at the Kennedy Center and at the White House, and and in Chicago while I was doing Matchmaker, I did it at the Goodman. So it's like it's so interesting to have something that is good for everybody. It's good for everybody. Somebody will get something out of this. I feel really, really, really lucky to have that.
Oh, well, that's so inspiring to hear that. And I can't tell you the things that I have heard from our community by watching this show every week. And when I hear something like that from you, I know that our listeners are going to be encouraged and touched. And, you know, we all need incentive to go on right now. I do think that if we keep our nose to the grindstone, there's light at the end of the tunnel. To put two cliches together, but it really, I mean, theater as we know it may not look very similar to what we had a year ago when we come out of this. But you've got to believe that there are forces that are making us more creative now and forging ahead that will make it better for that, rather than to be competing constantly with film and TV and everything else that is you know, out there. We're going to be so hungry for live theater in any form when we get past
and
it.
Theater's been around for millennia, and it has lived. It has survived wars and plagues and all manner of catastrophes. And yes, it might emerge in a slightly different form, but I think the idea of live theater, as you say, I think people are going to be starved for it. I think we're already starved for it. But theater, it is sort of like, you know, the cockroach of the arts. It's going to survive Armageddon. Even when there's no Wi-Fi, you can still get.
That's the thing. Right? That's the thing, Joanne. It's the live theater could be just people standing up in the middle of Times Square, just standing up and suddenly bursting into song
in the middle of the ashes. I mean, it is the one thing that we can always create.
Well, and I think that sometimes we forget that when things are too good, you know, in the theater, when the big mega musicals are making so much money and we're doing it all with special effects and bringing stories that we've already seen in film and just replicating them on the stage, and people are still flocking to it and paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Well, a little bit of a reset there in terms of ticket prices and production values and the expectations. A little bit of a reset there would not be the worst thing.
Right.
That's what I'm alluding to, Joanne. And that's really, I mean, I don't want to crash those shows because
no, of course not.
Have a place. But even just what Anita described, when we look at a show that was a cash cow and a long-running tourist hit and is much disparaged in a lot of venues as Cats, and then to find out that at a little theater like Surflight, we saw a whole new light on that show. I think that's very inspiring too, and it comes from we you know, we're all typed to a certain extent, and we type ourselves, and you know, you have to forge ahead. I mean, Amy, how many times have you done Peter Pan?
7 times.
Well, I got you beat for Man of La Mancha, but that's all right. But you know, the point is that's a gift, and it's something that keeps us working. But it also can be a rut. So but you also did Moliere recently, and
exactly, yeah.
You also did a play called The English Bride, which was yours from the beginning, a world premiere, correct?
That was an amazing experience. Yeah, that was like just a gift of a show, of a role, everything. It was an incredibly special experience.
That moved from Centenary, where we worked together.
Yep, it moved from Centenary Stage to off-Broadway, and 59 and 59, where Einstein's Dream also was a different time. But I think, you know, one of the lessons or whatever that I've learned as we all get older every day is, yes, you have to know how to market yourself, and you have to know, you know, where your strengths are and what you naturally bring to the table or don't. But I feel that in some ways, show business, I'm not saying theater or art, but the business part, you know, the impetus is that it wants to put you in, like, this is what you do. This is what you do. And sometimes you have to say, that's great. And I love that. Like, I mean, doing Peter Pan has been the joy of my life. I'm sitting at my desk in front of 100 Peter Pan mementos, and it was so special and is so special. But I think, you know, we all sometimes have to say, okay, no, I can do this too. You know, that was an interesting experience because I give the director, Carl Walno, all the credit in the world, because I went to that audition and I feel like, well, this doesn't sound bitter or angry. I don't mean it that way. It's just the reality of New York. If you had looked at my resume, and I have a lot of musicals on my resume, particularly at that point, this was about 7 years ago when I did it the first time, I was like, I never would have gotten called in for this. If it were a, like, New York City, straight ahead, you know, someone screening the resumes, I was like, I would never have gotten seen for this role. But there's something to be said for that level of screening getting taken out of it, and, you know, may the best slutty English bride win. You know, I mean, like, you go and in that context, Carl, who is a musical guy and an actor and singer himself, had no compunction about saying, oh, but this is a musical theater actress. Like, can she really do this? For which I am very grateful.
Well, I have to tell you, a director that I worked with many times, and Carl was on a few weeks ago too, and I'm very grateful to him for a lot of opportunities to do very, very varied plays that I wouldn't have gotten a chance to do. But someone who directs a lot of musicals and a lot of Shakespeare once said to me that he loves to work with musical theater actors on Shakespeare because they have a sense of the music and to be able to work in different periods, because in musicals, most of them are not in contemporary dress. True. So you have to adapt your style and you know, your knowledge of history and context, and that happens in modern Shakespeare productions. And so, in essence, what he was saying is that musical theater people, when well trained, are very adaptable, and that's always encouraging to hear. It took me a long time to have a resume where I could say, oh, it's 50-50 here. You know, I could actually take off some of these musical credits and I would still have a very full resume. And actually, the last few years, I've done mostly straight plays. So
I've done more than musical.
Yeah, now I have to vocalize every once in a while to prove that I can still sing. So, you know, and listen, I mean, you have made a career on a niche to play Peter Pan, but you've also you did Seussical as well. I mean, are you the go-to Who?
I know, it's thank God for Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss has been a boon to my career. I did the first national tour of Seussical, which was joy. And then I ended up doing Grinch I was in the original Broadway cast, and I've done almost every equity production of it since then. It goes out every few years. There was one I couldn't do because my son was very small and it was in California, and I just couldn't make it happen. But I always joke that I'm like, thank you, Dr. Seuss. This is a huge part of my life. But that's such a joyous show too, and one of the best things about doing that show's like a family too, because people return to the cast and then are away and then come back. But it's so many young people's first show, and that just tickles me. I just love it, and I feel sort of honored for being part of that. And sometimes I have run into people saying, that was the first show I ever saw, and I love that. It just fills me with happiness when people say that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, we're actually coming up to the point where we'd usually take a few-minute intermission.
Excellent.
So people can have a potty break or refill their drink. I have a drink here that's almost done. I know it says Seagram's gin on it, but it's actually iced coffee. Before we break for our intermission, which we will have a little musical interlude, we also do a quiz question. And in honor of an all-female panel today, my quiz question is, for you musical theater aficionados, who was the first female composer to write a score for a Broadway musical? Now, I don't mean just one song, and I don't mean the lyrics. I mean the score, the music to a Broadway musical. And we'll have the answer after we listen to this intermission feature, which is the title song from Einstein's Dreams, and the new recording that you can download now. And will it be a CD eventually? Or
yes, it will be a CD eventually.
For those of us who still collect, even when I download music, I have to burn it to a CD because I can't stand the idea of not having that little envelope in front of me so I can read the liner notes, although I can't read the liner notes on CD books anymore. So I've kept all of my vinyl, and maybe one day I'll start getting rid of it.
I just want to say one thing, if this is the track that you're going to play, spoiler alert, the character who sings this she's the woman who appears to Einstein in his dreams, and in this moment she is revealing her true identity to him, and she is the personification of time. Beautiful. And he has fallen in love with time as a beautiful woman.
Well, you're in for a treat. Let's listen to this and take your break, or just stay glued to your computer and listen to the music, and we'll see you in a few minutes, and we'll answer the quiz question.
Excellent.
And we'll quell over the music.
Okay.
Bravo.
Well, bravo, Alexandra Silber and Zallow, who sang the pants off it. And my husband, Josh Rosenblum, who wrote that incredible, my husband's a genius, I'm just going to say it.
Exactly, yes.
He's a little, well, Amy, you can vouch.
Yes.
It's wonderful to hear music that soars like that, and also intelligent lyrics that actually rhyme,
Well, we have a joke in our family. Well, first of all, Josh teaches composing for musical theater at Yale as part of the Shen curriculum, which was endowed by Ted and Mary Jo Shen. And he is a real stickler for rhyming and scansion, no false rhymes. And both of our kids write music and lyrics, and they know that they will be cut out of their inheritance if they ever use a false rhyme. Serious business in our family. No, I'm kidding, but as writers, they are hyper aware of it. I do have a funny little anecdote about the end of that song. So when we wrote it, I had this Josh wrote the song, and I said, and at the end, Josette, that's the time character, flies and bursts into flame. That was my idea for how it should end. So, fun fact, the show was actually produced in Portugal, in Portuguese, before it was produced in New York. We knew nothing about the production going in. We go to see the show, and sure enough, they fly her at the climax of the song. She did not burst into flames. Actress is safe and whole, but they flew her. So when you said soaring, I mean, that was kind of we couldn't fly anybody at 59 East 59th Street.
Well, that's probably just as well. Amy, who has flown many times, will tell you.
I thought you might appreciate that.
I have done Peter Pan more than once too, but I did not play Peter Pan. Contrary to what you might think, I have been Captain Hook, and always very grateful that I didn't have to fly.
It can be amazing, and it can be very scary depending on who's flying you and what's happening.
I'd be terrified.
Yeah, it is
twice as Wendy, and I know that. I just remember that you always had to arch your back.
Yep.
Because otherwise, you're flying.
You'd be like, "Wow."
Yeah, exactly. A lot of children, of course, are in that show. There's always piles of children in it, and that was, for some reason, that's always the hardest thing for the kids, to arch their back. They just
keep arching.
Like, yeah.
It's interesting that you use the term piles of children.
I love children, big piles.
Yeah, yeah, I love them sautéed in butter. And no, I mean, that's not my persona. I love kids too, when they're other people's kids.
When you can give them back at the end of the day.
Yeah,
that's legit too.
Oh yeah.
I did 2 versions of The Prince and the Pauper, 2 different musical treatments inside 6 months with a slew of kids. I was Miles Hendon in both of these treatments. And the most confusing thing for me was that the one who played the prince in one was the pauper in the other one.
Oh my God.
And I had barely begun to learn their names in the one. But both of them went on to great, well, I wouldn't say great success, but they went on from where I did them, and I didn't go with them. So, it's ironic, just to see how people think of you in one way, and then they don't. And I originated the same role in 2 versions, and then was dumped by both. So
that's showbiz. Oh my God. Right there.
Well, no, I know why in both times. Sometimes they just need a television name. So anyway, before I forget, we do have to answer our quiz question, and I believe we got an answer from one of the usual suspects who seems to get it every week, and she is indeed correct. Kay Swift wrote a musical called Fine and Dandy that had a bunch of standards emerge from that score, including the title song that we still hear today quite often. And I thought I would ask that question, particularly today because of the all-female panel. But Kay Swift, this pertains to you again, Joanne, is that the lyricist on Fine and Dandy was her husband, who was not particularly known as a lyricist. He was in the banking business, but I did an interesting workshop of a play last fall called Duet for Three, which came about because Fine and Dandy, having such a wonderful score, people wanted to revive this show, and they found that the book was not usable. So a wonderful playwright by the name of David Caudle came up with an idea to tell the story of writing Fine and Dandy, which is more interesting than we knew, because it really is a story of a love triangle between George Gershwin, Kay Swift, and her husband.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the kind of emotional struggle that they had during the creation of this musical.
Wow.
And so Gabe Barry directed it, and we hope that it will have some life soon when we all get back on the stage. So so yes, DG Brandamore Brava, once again, for getting almost every quiz question right every week. She watches the show. Of course, we've had many female composers on Broadway musicals since. I don't want anybody to assume that she was the one and only. But so anyway, bringing up that project, a little more self-promotion here. I always like at this point to ask that scary question: what are you working on now that you I think I know at least two of you have projects in the hopper that you're always working on, writing. Um, uh, Anita, you have an album too that we didn't mention yet, but we will, because we're going to play a cut from it later. So is this songs that you wrote for the shows, or the
Are we talking about Still Standing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all the songs from Still Standing.
So it is in essence a cast album. An original cast album.
It is. And it has sold, I mean, it's sold about 1,000 copies, which is like the biggest thing. But for me, I always thought that was pretty cool.
It is.
One-man band, one-woman band or whatever. But yeah, I've got 2 CDs out. One is Still Standing, and Spectacular Falls came out last fall.
Wonderful. Well, I'll be looking for that one. I know Still Standing, but I didn't know about the newer one, so we'll have to look that up as well. That's exciting. Are you developing yet another musical, another one-woman show, perhaps?
Well,
there's plenty of opportunities right now, I guess.
Yeah. A lot of people have said that there has to be it has to be a trilogy. And a lot of people have come up with some very interesting ideas for what, after Still Standing and Spectacular Falls, is like, what would be the middle of that? Like balancing act or something like that, somewhere in between. During this pandemic, for Theater Breaking Through Barriers, they needed people to write 5-minute plays, and I wrote one about my daughter's wedding, the Zoom wedding thing, which at first she was very unhappy with me for writing this piece because it was a comedy. Because you see, I always find it was funny, Amy, when you said you laughed hysterically in that audition thing, and when that happened, I have a tendency to find the humor in the worst moments of life, and it's been very hard on my family because when my daughter and I were walking through a butcher shop when she was 4, I thought it would lighten things up if I sang Little Lamb, from Gypsy, right? Little lamb. And my 4-year-old daughter looked up at me with the look I had never seen in her face. Like, I was like, how could you? What are you doing? I thought it was funny. So I wrote this play. It's actually more of a 10-minute play, but between a mother and a daughter about, now what do? We can't have the wedding. What are we going to do? And how are we going to do this? And I was my Jewish mother. I decided it should be, go all the way, full Jewish mother. And I thought it was hilarious. And she said, no, absolutely not. You can't do this anywhere. I said, okay. But, there are things in life that are terrible, but they can be funny too. And she was very sensitive and kind about the whole thing because she said, well, if you make it about somebody else and not me, don't have me as a character, meaning her. Don't let me be a character in that. Then you can do it. That was very gracious of her because it was such a heartbreak about the wedding. And I just thought it was hilarious how we put together this wedding in our apartment, and there were funny things. Anyway, so I said, well, what if we make up an imaginary sister for you? And it's me, the mother, talking to your sister about, well, how is she doing? And, oh, Mom, don't call her. Don't call, stuff like that. And it turned out to be a very funny play that took my daughter out of the picture, and she said it was okay. She got her approval. But there's another playwright intensive coming up, signing on as a playwright. So who knows? There'll be another play.
Great. Well, that's the thing. We have to make some serious lemonade out of the lemons that we've got right now. And I wouldn't be here sharing this time with you all right now if it weren't for this pandemic. I know that seems like something very small, but it really isn't. This whole time has reminded us how much we need that connection with our fellow theater artists, and I'm so encouraged by the warmth that this show has been received with. You can tell I'm not a writer, and also, you know, the connection that I have, I last week, or was it the week before? I don't know. They were all starting to blend together. But I ran out of my house without a mask on because I had been right after the show, because I was so used to seeing 4 faces without masks and me feeling that it was a normal time. And I was halfway out of the building and I thought, oh, God, I have to go back. So that's a good thing. We need to be reminded there was life before, there's life after, and you know what? There's life during. So a lot of life during. Joanne, you must be working on something, another novel, or you're promoting the album, certainly.
Well, the album, it's funny. Everybody in my family has been much more creative during this time than I have. I have an idea for a play, a 2, possibly 3 character play. It hasn't quite gone where I want it to go. I'm a bit stumped. So that's kind of sitting on the sidelines. Josh and I have an idea for another musical, but we have to wait until there could be more than 3 people on stage before that ever happens. I'm going to take this moment to plug my kids. Tying together the Jewish mother theme. So my kids are 19 and 24, and they have a podcast called Carol and Ethel's Podcast, which you can find on Podbean, Podben, Carol and Ethel's Podcast, where they are Ethel Goldenberger and Carol Blumenfeld, and they're 2 little Jewish ladies from the Upper West Side, and they discuss everything. And they're very short. They're like 4-minute episodes, and my son writes them, and they're really funny, and he just churns them out. P.S. like he's a software engineer by trade, but also a really good comic writer. Anyway, so I'm going to take this opportunity to plug my kids.
Love it.
Terrific. Everybody, I hope you had your pens poised. The beauty of this show is that you can play it back. And
Carol and Ethel's Podcast on Podbean, Podben. I think if you just Google it, you'll find it.
Terrific. And what have you got to say, Amy, about what are you thinking about?
I'm actually directing and acting in a reading on Zoom coming up. And that is a brand new world and a new experience. Interestingly, I've never directed something that I am also in. So a reading, I think, is a great way to start that. But I'm not particularly technologically gifted, so this should be a new experience. But I think also I have had to kind of put my big girl panties on during the pandemic and say, okay, like I have never been one of those people that really loved putting auditions on tape. And I'm like, no, can I just go? And do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? And it's actually been kind of good for me to say, yeah, you need to make friends with this now. You need to, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be your main thing, but you can't shy away from it anymore, which honestly, I feel like I was doing a little bit before. So I'm trying to embrace and say, great, now is the time that I learn this new skill and I'm going to get good at it. But
That's
it's wonderful to play. And the newness of it, for me, is kind of like getting my creativity all excited. So
I'm so pleased to hear that. And this is something I repeat every week, that we are making friends with this new technology that even after the pandemic is going to be a part of our lives for auditions and for performances more than we knew. And when I first started this, I thought, oh gosh, I can't stop looking at my face. I can't do it. Now it's just it's second nature, and I'm sure they're going to throw something else at us very soon, technologically, that we're going to have to learn. And I used to tease my dad and say, "Oh, you don't want to learn anything new." That's one of the things I think we face as human beings, is that things change so fast now. It used to be that, when our species were living in caves, it would be another 10,000 years before they discovered fire. And then another millennium would go by and the wheel. and now it's like if you don't have the latest iPhone or so it happens so fast, and we have to adapt, and it feels like to use that lyric from Falsettos, holding to the ground when the ground.
Oh yeah, I felt that many times.
And this episode in our lives has made the biggest shift that we could have imagined right now. But we're shifting along with it. And you realize, Amy, this is the second time we've mentioned an undergarment of yours, your big girl panties and your push-up bra.
Yeah. That's kind of my thing. I really like to talk about underwear.
If that doesn't help viewership here, I just don't know what. So I doubt if
one for the therapist. I'll have to call my therapist.
well, we're almost to our time, and I do want to announce my guests for next week. And I don't think they're going to be discussing big girl panties or.
You hope maybe.
I hope not, and if they do, I hope it's with a positive purpose. But because I have 3 gentlemen next week, so it'll be an all-male panel. We have Don Farrell, who is a wonderful actor and director, happens to be the artistic director of Actors Theater of Indiana, and Steve Steiner, someone that I know Anita knows very well, who is an actor and a director and the artistic director of Surflight Theater that has gone through an amazing season this year, Just to Stay Alive. And we're going to talk to him about that. And taking another reversal, a very talented performer, Gregory Trico from the Broadway cast of Hamilton. Has anybody heard of that show? I don't know.
Rings a bell.
Yeah. So those are our guests for next week. And I would like to thank you all again for this wonderful hour and a half that you've spent with me and all of my guests out there. You'll never know what this means to the theater community. I want to remind everybody to, if you can, donate to the Actors Fund, because it is a very particularly difficult time for people involved in the theater, and they do a tremendous amount for us. And so our play out this afternoon, I've been saving this until the end, is a wonderful, the first cut from the CD of Still Standing. And the minute I heard it, I knew this had to be our play out music. This is a song called Mommy's a Mermaid. Thank you, Anita Hollander. And thank you, Joanne and Amy. And I hope I will see you all in person soon.
Thank you.
Bless you.